All right, so let's dive into something pretty fascinating today. It's called the Vortex theory, and it's not every day you come across a development model that claims it can fast track struggling economies to success. And the best part, it comes from someone who's been in the trenches, Dr. Abdou Karim GUEYE, former Director General of Senegal's National School of Administration and Magistrature. He's got this insightful Substack post that really caught my eye, especially the part where he compares the process to a strategically orchestrated tornado. That's a pretty vivid image, isn't it? Yeah, gets the point across. The Vortex theory is all about speed. It's not about nudging things along slowly. It's about creating a focused burst of momentum that can rapidly transform a sector or even an entire region. So it's like hitting the fast forward button on development. Exactly. What's fascinating here is that Dr. GUEYE argues that this accelerated pace is actually crucial for overcoming the inertia that can plague economies stuck in a rut. He believes that slow incremental change just doesn't cut it. You need a concentrated, almost explosive force to break free from the status quo and set a new trajectory. Okay, I'm intrigued, but how do you actually create this vortex? Where do you even begin? He calls the starting point strategic niches. These are specific areas with huge untapped potential, and the key here is picking the right battles. It's not about spreading resources thin, it's about laser focus. So what might a strategic niche look like in the real world? Think of a country with incredible wind resources but is stuck relying on outdated energy infrastructure. That could be a perfect strategic niche for renewable energy development. Or maybe there's a region with a pool of talented craftspeople, but they lack access to global markets. Now, creating a digital platform to connect them with international buyers, that could be another potent strategic niche. So instead of trying to tackle everything at once, you pinpoint those specific areas where a concentrated effort can yield the biggest impact. Precisely. It's about leveraging existing strengths and aligning them with emerging opportunities. And GUEYE is adamant that location plays a huge role. He uses this really cool French word, tremplin, which means springboard. It's about finding the perfect launching point, the specific location where a strategic niche can truly take flight. So not just any old niche will do. You really need to analyze the geography, the existing resources, the potential for growth. It's a lot more nuanced than I initially thought. Absolutely, it's not a one-size-fits-all model. You have to tailor the approach to the unique context of each location. But once you've identified that perfect trampoline, that's where the vortex really starts to spin. Okay? So you've got your strategically chosen niche and your perfectly positioned springboard. What happens next? Look, Dr. GUEYE outlines a three-phase process for building and unleashing the vortex. He calls them initial growth, impact expansion, and systemic transformation. And each phase builds on the momentum of the previous one. All right, let's break those down. Tell me about initial growth. What's the main focus there? Well, it's all about maximizing impact within those chosen strategic niches. It's about making smart investments, optimizing resources, and really going all in on a few high potential areas. Interestingly, Dr. GUEYE argues we need to think beyond traditional infrastructure too. Really? What does he suggest instead? He's a big proponent of focusing on things like renewable energy and building local digital platforms. It's about recognizing that true transformation requires breaking free from those old paradigms and investing in the technologies and industries of the future. Interesting. So instead of just paving roads or building bridges, you're talking about laying the groundwork for a more sustainable and digitally connected future. Exactly. It's about building a foundation for long-term growth and resilience. And as those initial investments start to pay off, as those strategic niches begin to thrive, that's when you move into the second phase, impact expansion. Okay? So this is where the Vortex starts to pick up speed and broaden its reach. Precisely. We're talking about scaling up those initial successes, forging regional partnerships, and diversifying into new sectors that complement those strategic niches. And this is where Dr. GUEYE emphasizes the power of clusters. Clusters? What are those? He's talking about strategically grouping businesses, institutions, and local communities around those high potential niches. The idea is to create a mini ecosystem for success where everyone benefits from each other's strengths. So it's like a rising tide lifting all boats, but in a very focused and strategic way. Exactly. It's about fostering collaboration, sharing knowledge, and creating a multiplier effect that amplifies the impact of those initial investments. This is getting really interesting. So tell me, what does the final phase systemic transformation look like? This is where things get truly exciting. Think of a country fully digital service or a company integrating AI into every process. It's about fundamental shift in how an economy operates. So we're talking about a complete reinvention, not just tweaking around the edges. Absolutely. It's about achieving level of economic independence and creating a culture where innovation is woven into the very fabric of society. That's a pretty bold vision, but I have to admit I'm also a bit skeptical. Realistically, how do you go from these focused niches to transforming an entire system? There must be significant hurdles along the way. Oh, there definitely are. Dr. GUEYE doesn't sugarcoat the challenges. In fact, he dedicates a good portion of his post to outlining the potential roadblocks. One of the biggest is that real systemic change takes time. Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? But patience can be a tough sell, especially when we're talking about addressing urgent development challenges. Exactly. And it's not just about time, there's also the human element. People are naturally resistant to change, especially when it comes to disrupting familiar ways of doing things. No, tell me about it. I'm still trying to convince my parents to switch from their flip phone. But on a larger scale, that resistance can really stall progress, can't it? Absolutely. Navigating that resistance and getting buy-in from various stakeholders, whether it's local communities, businesses, or government agencies, is crucial. And then there's the whole issue of coordination. This model seems to involve a lot of moving parts. How do you keep everything running smoothly and make sure everyone's on the same page? That's a great point. This level of orchestrated change requires a high degree of coordination. Dr. GUEYE emphasizes the need for strong leadership, a clearly defined vision, and effective communication across all levels. In fact, he even suggests creating a dedicated national transformation agency to manage the complexity. Wow, a whole government agency devoted to rapid change. That's a pretty radical idea. Is that even practical? Well, this speaks to the scale and ambition of the Vortex theory. GUEYE believes that traditional bureaucratic structures often move too slowly to keep pace with the rapid changes needed. I see what you mean. So funding is another obvious challenge, right? These kinds of large-scale transformations require significant investment. Where does that money come from? That's something Dr. GUEYE addresses head-on. He argues that traditional funding models, particularly in Africa, often fall short. He proposes some pretty radical reform to bureaucratic systems to unlock more capital for these Vortex initiatives. He suggests a system where funding comes from the value generated by the innovators and creators themselves. So it's kind of a self-sustaining ecosystem where success breeds more success. I mean, it sounds almost too good to be true. It does, doesn't it? The core idea is intriguing. It's about empowering those who are driving the change, giving them the resources to succeed, and then using their success to fuel further growth. It definitely challenges those traditional development models that often rely heavily on external aid or loans. It's more about fostering a sense of ownership and self-reliance. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this all plays out in practice. Can you give me a concrete example of how the Vortex theory could be applied? Sure. Let's say you're looking at a region with significant agricultural potential, but the farming practices are outdated and yields are low. Now, using the Vortex theory, you'd first identify a specific strategic niche, perhaps focusing on a particular crop or region with unique potential. Then you might invest in things like modern irrigation techniques, drought-resistant seeds, or digital platforms that connect farmers with markets. Those initial investments would then trigger a ripple effect. So those initial successes start to create a buzz, attracting more investment, maybe inspiring neighboring communities to adopt those new techniques. Exactly, and as the impact expands, you might start to see the development of local processing facilities, new businesses popping up to support the agricultural boom, maybe even a surge in agritourism. And ultimately, that leads to a systemic transformation, a complete shift in how that region's economy functions, right? That's the goal. And it's not just about economic benefits, it's about improving livelihoods, creating jobs, and building more resilient communities. But to get there, you need that stay in focus and a willingness to embrace change. You know, it sounds like Dr. Gueye really emphasizes the need for a shift in mindset, not just in economic models. He believes that creating a culture of innovation is essential for sustaining the momentum of the Vortex. It's about promoting STEM education, supporting local entrepreneurs, and creating spaces for collaboration and knowledge sharing. He even suggests reforming bureaucratic systems to be more agile and responsive to the needs of innovators. So it's not just about building something new, it's about building a system that can constantly adapt and evolve. Exactly. Dr. Gueye is a big believer in data-driven decision-making and using key performance indicators to track progress. He suggests things like measuring the rate of identifying strategic niches, the cost of implementation, the level of private investment attracted, and the number of jobs created. Okay, so there's a strong emphasis on transparency and accountability throughout the process. But let's face it, implementing something as radical as the Vortex theory is bound to encounter pushback, especially in systems that have been operating a certain way for a long time. How do you get people on board with such a dramatic departure from the status quo? Dr. Gueye advocates for a leadership style that's both visionary and inclusive. He believes that leaders need to inspire people to embrace the potential of the Vortex while addressing their concerns and fears. So it's about leading by example, but also through collaboration and open dialogue, making sure everyone has a voice. Exactly. He stresses the importance of building a shared vision, fostering a sense of ownership among stakeholders, and creating a culture where everyone feels empowered to contribute to the transformation. It's a tall order, but he believes it's essential for long-term success. You know, it's fascinating how the Vortex theory manages to be incredibly ambitious and incredibly pragmatic at the same time. It seems Dr. Gueye has a knack for blending those big visionary ideas with a keen understanding of the nitty-gritty realities on the ground. He does. And he's not naive about the challenges. He acknowledges that implementing the Vortex theory isn't a one and done deal. It's an ongoing process that requires constant adaptation, learning, and refinement. It's a reminder that real transformation takes more than just good ideas. It takes hard work, commitment, and a willingness to stay the course even when things get tough. It's definitely a long game, but I think what makes Dr. Gueye's approach so compelling is that it shifts the focus from problems to possibilities. Instead of dwelling on limitations, it's about identifying and amplifying those sparks of potential that already exist. It's like he's saying, stop focusing on what's holding you back and start harnessing what can propel you forward. I love that. But let's be honest, not everyone is wired to think that way. How do you cultivate that mindset, that belief that rapid transformation is even possible? That's a great question. Dr. Gueye argues that it starts with a fundamental shift in culture, a move away from a scarcity mindset to one of abundance. It's about fostering a belief that there are enough resources, enough opportunities, enough talent to go around. And it's not just about policy makers and business leaders. It has to permeate every level of society. He talks about the importance of grassroots innovation, right? Empowering everyday citizens to be part of the solution. Exactly. It's about tapping into the collective wisdom and creativity of the community. Dr. Gueye outlined some concrete strategies for fostering this culture of innovation, like promoting STEM education from an early age, creating incubators and accelerators to support local entrepreneurs, and even establishing community centers where people can come together to share ideas and collaborate on projects. It's like creating a fertile ground for those strategic niches to take root and flourish. Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of removing bureaucratic roadblocks that often stifle innovation. He suggests streamlining regulations, simplifying the process for starting businesses, and creating incentives for private investment in those high potential sectors. So it's about creating a more agile and responsive system, one that empowers individuals and communities to drive change from the bottom up. But all of this sounds like a pretty tall order. Well, Dr. Gueye points to some promising examples in his post. He cites the success of certain tech hubs in Africa, where focused investments in infrastructure and skills development have led to a surge in startups and innovation. He also highlights the rapid growth of mobile banking in Kenya, which has transformed financial inclusion for millions of people. So they're real-world success stories that suggest the Vortex theory isn't just a pipe dream. Exactly. These examples show that it is possible to create those pockets of rapid transformation. The challenge lies in replicating and scaling those successes across different sectors and regions. This is where the importance of strong leadership, effective communication, and a shared vision come into play. It's not enough to have a good idea. You need to be able to rally people around it and execute it effectively. Absolutely. It's about creating a movement, a collective effort to push for change. And I think that's what makes the Vortex theory so inspiring. It's a reminder that we don't have to be passive bystanders in the face of seemingly intractable challenges. We have the power to shape our own future. And the Vortex theory gives us a framework for doing just that. It's about reclaiming that sense of agency and possibility. It's about believing that we can be the architects of our own destiny, even in the face of seemingly overwhelming odds. I love that, and I think Dr. GUEYE would agree. He's not just proposing a new economic model. He is advocating for a new way of thinking about development, one that's rooted in optimism, empowerment, and a belief in the transformative power of collective action. So for our listeners out there, what's the one key takeaway you hope they walk away with from this deep dive? I hope they come away with a sense of possibility, a belief that rapid positive change is within reach. Maybe they'll even be inspired to find those strategic niches in their own fields or communities and start unleashing their own mini vortices. I love that image. So to wrap things up, what are some practical steps our listeners can take to start applying the principles of the Vortex theory in their own lives? Well, I think it starts with asking some key questions. Where do I see the greatest potential for positive change? What are the existing strengths and resources that I can leverage? What are the roadblocks that I need to overcome? And who are the people I need to collaborate with to make this happen? It's about shifting from a passive observer to an active participant, becoming a catalyst for change. Exactly. And remember, transformation is a journey, not a destination. There will be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt along the way. But if you stay focused on that vision of a better future, if you keep pushing forward, the Vortex theory can be a powerful tool for creating lasting positive change. Well, it's been a fascinating exploration of the Vortex theory. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and helping us unpack this truly innovative approach to development. It was my pleasure. Dr. Guy's work is truly inspiring. I hope this deep dive has sparked some new ideas and empowered our listeners to become agents of change in their own communities. And for those who want to explore the Vortex theory in more depth, we'll be sure to include a link to Dr. Guy's Substack post in the show notes. Absolutely, it's well worth a read. Thanks for joining us on this whirlwind journey through the Vortex theory. Until next time, keep those wheels of innovation spinning